Imagine this. It is May 1940, and the British Expeditionary Force is trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk. The German army, a relentless juggernaut of tanks, aircraft, and infantry, is closing in from all sides. Panic and despair grip the soldiers and commanders alike. But history, as we know it, is about to change dramatically. In this alternate timeline, Britain does not stage a miraculous evacuation. Instead, Prime Minister Winston Churchill hesitates. Exhausted from the rapid defeats in France and Belgium, facing immense political and public pressure, he decides to surrender. The Union Jack is lowered and the white flag rises over London. The British Empire, the last major Western opponent of Hitler at the time, effectively capitulates. What would happen next? How would Europe transform under complete German dominance? How would the United States respond? What would daily life look like for ordinary people in this new world? And how might the 20th century, and ultimately our world today, look entirely different if this single decision had gone another way? By the end of this video, you will witness a chilling alternate history where one moment of surrender reshapes global politics, society, and war itself. You won't want to miss a single twist. The divergence begins at Dunkirk. In our timeline, the British Expeditionary Force was rescued against impossible odds, but in this alternate scenario, the evacuation fails catastrophically. Ships are destroyed, the Luftwaffe decimates troops on the beaches, and communication failures create chaos. Britain, witnessing the near-total destruction of its forces, chooses to surrender to preserve what remains of its military and civilian infrastructure. The immediate effect is profound. Hitler's planners, who had anticipated a prolonged struggle across the English Channel, suddenly face no opposition from the West. Britain's surrender frees Germany to consolidate its hold over Western Europe without distraction. The German High Command can now focus on long-term occupation strategies, preparing puppet governments and redirecting resources to other theaters of war. The political shockwaves extend beyond Europe. France, already wavering under the pressure of the German advance, loses its main ally. Morale collapses. French commanders debate surrender while Hitler's forces exploit the chaos to push south and west. The fall of Britain destabilizes neutral nations, emboldens Axis powers like Italy and Japan, and causes uncertainty across the globe. Every nation begins to question its alliances, its defenses, and its future. This surrender also reshapes military thinking. The Royal Navy, once a symbol of British resilience, is neutralized or incorporated into a cooperative armistice. The RAF no longer provides cover for European operations. German forces achieve air superiority over the Channel, and invasion plans that might have failed in reality now seem feasible. The surrender is not just a political statement, it changes the strategic landscape of Europe entirely. With Britain out of the war, the French resistance collapses rapidly. The French government, deprived of British support and demoralized by the sense of inevitable defeat, struggles to mount even minimal defense. German forces sweep through northern France without encountering the logistical or strategic setbacks that slowed them in our timeline. Paris falls within weeks rather than months. The Vichy government forms immediately, but instead of a semi-autonomous state, it is heavily controlled and coerced by the Germans. France is no longer a partner or a neutral zone. It becomes a puppet state fully integrated into Hitler's vision for Europe. The psychological effect on occupied nations is staggering. The rapid collapse of Britain and France convinces many countries that resistance is futile. Governments negotiate to preserve themselves, while citizens live under the constant threat of occupation. The moral authority of democracy suffers a crushing blow. Resistance movements struggle to gain traction. Small-scale uprisings are quickly quashed. Survival becomes the primary goal for ordinary people, and collaboration becomes a necessary evil for some. Meanwhile, Hitler gains momentum. The German military can now plan operations with the confidence that the Western Front is effectively neutralized. The timing and intensity of campaigns elsewhere, from Scandinavia to North Africa, are recalibrated to take advantage of this unprecedented strategic freedom. The surrender of Britain accelerates not only Germany's expansion, but also its psychological dominance across Europe. By mid-1940, Hitler's Germany dominates Western Europe. Italy, encouraged by German success, aggressively expands in North Africa and the Balkans. Japan, observing a world where Western powers are paralyzed, escalates its conquests in China and Southeast Asia. With Britain neutralized, Germany can assert naval dominance in the Atlantic. Trade routes collapse, global shipping slows, and neutral nations scramble to negotiate survival. The consequences are enormous. Nations that once relied on British support begin to consider accommodation with Germany. Resistance movements are isolated and weakened, unable to coordinate with external allies. Hitler's plans for a continental European empire proceed with minimal opposition. Every decision, from military operations to administrative control, is made in a world where the West's last stronghold has fallen. The surrender also reshapes public perception. Hitler appears invincible. The psychological impact on both allies and neutrals cannot be overstated. Countries that might have resisted, like the Netherlands, Belgium, or even Scandinavia, now weigh the cost of defiance against the overwhelming German machine. The sense of inevitability spreads. Europe begins to feel as though it has already been won. By this point, a single question looms over the world. Could any nation stop Hitler if the largest Western power had already surrendered? Midpoint CTA. If this alternate history has you intrigued, hit like and subscribe, because the next section will explore how the United States responds to this radically different global battlefield. With Britain out of the war, America's role becomes more complicated. Isolationists argue that intervention is futile without a strong European ally. Interventionists insist that Hitler's unchecked power will eventually threaten the United States directly. Without Britain serving as a staging ground or a partner in strategic operations, logistics for any American intervention are incredibly difficult. Meanwhile, Japan accelerates its expansion in the Pacific. With no British colonies actively defending territories in Asia, Japanese forces conquer resources and territory with relative ease. Pearl Harbor may still occur, but now the Pacific theater is even more dangerous, and the United States faces a better prepared, more unified Axis coalition. The delayed American response has cascading effects. Nuclear weapons development, industrial mobilization, and military strategy all change under the assumption that Germany and Japan control much of the globe. Research programs may accelerate, but America faces a higher stakes challenge than in our timeline. Resistance movements in occupied Europe receive minimal external support, struggling to survive without the British as a conduit. This period illustrates one critical truth. Britain's surrender doesn't just affect Europe. It changes the timing, strategy, and scale of global conflict, creating a world where the balance of power has shifted dramatically before America even fully mobilizes. Daily life under Axis dominance is starkly different from what history recorded. Propaganda saturates every aspect of society. Schools, media, and public institutions are co-opted to instill loyalty to German authorities. Citizens navigate survival under constant surveillance. Food shortages, rationing, and forced labor become the norm. In Britain, the psychological toll is severe. Soldiers return home to a country partially occupied or administered under German supervision. Daily life is punctuated by curfews, censorship, and compliance with occupation policies. Some citizens collaborate, some resist, and some merely survive. The societal fabric begins to shift under the pressure of occupation. Cultural life transforms under these constraints. Literature, theater, music, and art are either censored or manipulated for propaganda purposes. Innovation continues, but is heavily directed toward military or ideological goals. Society adapts, but at the cost of freedom, creativity, and moral certainty. The human cost of Britain's surrender is profound. Beyond the military and political ramifications, ordinary citizens live under new realities that alter their perception of morality, authority, and survival. The ripples of that single surrender affect families, communities, and the very culture of Europe for decades. Fast forward a decade, Germany dominates continental Europe. Britain's empire has been reduced or integrated under Axis oversight, and America confronts a world far more hostile than in reality. Nuclear weapons research may occur faster, but the stakes are higher. The Cold War as we know it might never emerge. Instead, global tension could be defined by the struggle between a stronger, fully empowered Axis and the United States. Colonial empires collapse faster under new pressures. Resistance movements in Asia and Africa struggle to gain traction without European support. Trade, technology, and cultural exchange are disrupted, reshaping the trajectory of human development. The global balance of power has shifted in ways that make the modern world almost unrecognizable. History, once a slow and incremental story of change, is rewritten in years instead of decades. Small decisions, like Churchill's hesitation at Dunkirk, have monumental consequences. The world becomes a cautionary tale of how fragile alliances and delayed action can reshape civilization. The surrender at Dunkirk illustrates a sobering truth. One moment can alter the course of history. Europe under Axis domination, a delayed American response, and societies struggling to survive under occupation are just a few of the consequences. History is fragile, and our world today exists because of decisions made in moments of courage, resistance, and resolve. If you've been captivated by this alternate history, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. In this series, we explore how small changes in history could have rewritten the world. Remember, history is not inevitable. Every choice matters. And sometimes the greatest victories are defined not by the wars we fight, but by the decisions we refuse to make.